Hey everyone, welcome to my channel, Books, Gurus, and Purrs. Today we're going to be discussing the show Interview the Vampire, the season finale, The Thing Lay Still. But before we do that, just keep in mind that when I review Interview the Vampire, if you haven't read the books and you're not caught up on the show, you're not going to want to watch this because I have a spoiler chat. I'm constantly talking about the books and the television show. So if you don't want to be spoiled for what's going to be coming forward on the show, don't watch this. All right, you've been warned. All right, so the episode opens up to Daniel in Dubai talking to Louis, and he is completely suspicious of Rashid because in his dreams he has this memory of when he was younger, and he realizes in his memories that Rashid was there when he met Louis, and that Rashid was the exact same age. So Louis continues to tell his story, and it opens up with Lestat playing with his food like he usually does, and Claudia and Louis seem a little more miserable than usual. They don't want to really partake in what Lestat is doing. And from there, someone shows up at their door, and it's a man that's ill that wants to be turned into a vampire. And so when that happens, one of my thoughts about moving forward is I wonder if Daniel is still going to be made into a vampire, because in the books he is, and I just don't know how it's going to play out anymore with the way that they're adapting this show. But it's something to keep in mind because the fact that a sick man came to them to be turned into the vampire made me think about Daniel and his current medical issues, and maybe this is another part of his life where he'll see becoming a vampire as an out of the situation he's in medically. But we'll see, maybe they won't. But Lestat sees that the person on his doorstep is a threat in a way for things to come, and so now he wants to leave New Orleans, which leaves an opening for Claudia to lay out her plan for what she has for Lestat. But the next scene is in Dubai, and it's just a brief conversation between Daniel Malloy and Louis, and I realized when they have this wide shot, it just seems like they're in a tomb, right? That's the idea that I got, that they're trapped in a way. And I know Louis brought up in previous episodes, probably episode 1, that they're basically in a giant coffin, but that just seemed to give me this more like claustrophobic feeling than I have in the other episodes before. Let me know what you think about that. I don't know if anybody else noticed that. Back home in the past with Lestat, Louis, and Claudia, Lestat is playing piano, and he happens to mumble to himself about those who must be kept. And any of the readers, I'm sure, will know that he's referring to the original vampires, Akasha and Enkil. And I thought that was a great nod. But when the show does these type of things, it throws me off, like what's happened when in the timeline, because I'm assuming maybe the book The Queen of the Damned as we know it has already happened in a way, or at least the meeting of Akasha for Lestat. So that's something to keep an eye out for. So while Lestat is playing on his piano, Claudia brings up an idea as a present rather than the twins, which now I'm annoyed because it should have tipped me off that what we read in the books was going to be kind of used against the readers in a way, but I really enjoyed it. So yeah, the present was not the twins, but an idea. And so that's when Claudia starts to lay the groundwork of trying to get Lestat to buy into a plan as if it's his idea. So now that Lestat's on board, they go to Tom's office because they want to make this Mardi Gras event happen. And Tom is now older and we get the sense that he now wants to become a vampire in his older age, right? He asks all of them, where do you meet the devil, and basically where do I sign up, So I thought that was a really good nod to a person that's in a place of power that someone like Louis and Lestat, more like Louis, was having to really have to climb the ladder and get permission from Tom. And even they're kind of doing the same thing. It's a different dynamic because now Tom needs something from them. From there, Lestat plans for their departure from New Orleans to sneak their coffins onto a boat. And we see Claudia go ahead and pick up the poison. Once the Mardi Gras event begins, Lestat does his over-the-top, tacky performance of biting a baby, which made me laugh. It made me think of how Louis was a character that wouldn't take a bite of his baby niece, but that Lestat is willing to bite this like fake baby in front of everybody to show how monstrous they are. And if that just like turns off a bunch of people there, which is hilarious. But for him, it's worth it because he's leaving anyways. So each vampire gives out favors so that they could all meet up at Lestat and Louis and Claudia's home. Pretend like they're going to offer immortality, but really they're going to kill these chosen ones. And once all these chosen people are at their home, I really liked how we see in the close-up shot how one of the twins is like way more tipsy than the others. But immediately after, there's this wide shot and we realize that Tom is just as tipsy as the twins, which is probably a nod of what's to come. And the first time I watched it, I didn't notice this, right? I didn't know what was coming. So on the second time watching the show, I thought, oh, wow, they really laid the groundwork for what's going to come next. Oh, I almost forgot. But before they meet with everyone at their home, Lestat meets with Louis on the balcony, and I thought it was a really beautiful scene. And Lestat gives this whole speech about how much she's going to miss New Orleans. And I think it was like in episode 2, I felt like they did the same technique of Lestat loving Louis, but Louis saying, oh, he just loved New Orleans. And I feel like through the conversation about New Orleans, what Lestat is really talking about is Louis, about their relationship. And it was just really beautiful. Lestat and Louis have a last dance together that is really beautiful, just the two of them celebrating love. And as Jacob Anderson that plays Louis pointed out, it's just that it was just such a beautiful moment, but their love is considered a crime, so it's just something that's not going to be in the history books. And I thought that was really really beautiful and sad, all mixed up together, right, with the moment. And so when they end up back home and the massacre happens, I just really paid attention how when it comes to Louis, he loves using his nails. I mean, he's been using his nails his whole this whole season. And going back to that moment of when he first took out a knife on his brother, I just feel like it's interesting that he likes to use his sharp nails as weapons. The other characters do too, but I feel like most of the time it's Louis. That's his preferred use of harming other people. So as any reader knows, Claudia poisoned twins in the book and Lestat drunk from them, but on this show it's different. Instead, it's about how when you drink someone's blood, it'll give you like similar effects. So like when Claudia drank from someone that was drank too much alcohol, then she became drunk. And so now we see that one of the twins is sick, right? And they're and even the reader, like someone like me, I'm waiting for Lestat to drink from one of the twins, but he doesn't. and instead we realize that Claudia poisoned Tom, and it's not really about killing Lestat, it's just about weakening him, right? Because he's too strong for Claudia and Louis. And so now that he has this poison in his system, he's weak enough to be challenged. And also Antoinette appears, and she's a vampire, which is also from the book, but we never see that character. That character's always in the periphery. And so Antoinette is very much an active player in this finale. And so we realize that Antoinette has been spying on Claudia and Louis the whole time. And this may have just been another way for Lestat to devise getting rid of Claudia. But Lestat's plan is completely foiled because Claudia murders Antoinette. She really takes her out. And it's Louis that grabs his cane that he pulled on his own brother. He grabs that same cane and uses that dagger to slit the throat of Lestat. And in that moment, Lestat says something like, "I'm glad it's you." And so through this whole journey, we've been taken through this romantic ideal of their relationship. And so when that moment happens, I just really wonder if that's real or if that's what Louis wants to believe he would have said to him while Lestat's having his throat slit. But I did find it incredibly poetic that Lestat pursued Louis the moment he saw him pull a dagger out on his own brother, and it's that same dagger that slits his throat. I thought that was really incredible callback to the beginning of the show. So by the end of this, Louis wants to give this over romanticized ideal of what happened, which is that they burned the bodies, they burned Antoinette, and they rode into the sunset and left Lestat behind. But ultimately, Daniel, back in Dubai in current times, just calls him on his BS. He points out that, hey, you're the person this whole time that loves feeding on rats. So then we see a little glimmer of the truth, which is that Claudia was trying to convince Louis to burn the body, and he just wasn't having it. And so they ditched the body, and as Daniel points out, he gave Lestat a chance to survive because he's still stuck on him. He just can't let him go. And as Daniel calls BS on Louis, it seems like he can't handle being faced with the truth. And so he walks over to that interior tree in their building and just sits there. And I think maybe he's just trying to calm himself. He just seems like he can't handle the truth. And I like that they played with this idea of an unreliable narrator, because it just makes you really think about how we should perceive this story between the one we're watching on television and the books that we've read. And as Daniel Malloy is totally calling Louis out on his BS, Rashid reveals himself to be the vampire Armand, which is so frustrating. When I saw this episode and I see that Armand is Rashid, I was so frustrated because they've been giving us breadcrumbs this whole time that Rashid is Armand, and I just kept pushing that thought away. I thought he might have been someone from the Telemasca. Episode 2, we see that Rashid, Armand, has the painting of Marius, which Armand painted himself. So, I mean, I did have some ideas, but I just thought, no, it can't be, because you can't tell that he's a vampire. And then I noticed that he's wearing gloves the whole time. Sorry, my foot fell asleep. I have to move this. But, I don't know. I'm annoyed that I didn't figure it out. Because, yeah, he's wearing gloves. He is a very old vampire. So, yeah, he can step into the light and not have it harm him. And then saying electronic mail, I think is what Rashid says in an earlier episode. And the fact that he has Mars is painted by Armand, and a reader would know that. I was just so annoyed. I really thought he was someone from the Talamasca, because in my head he couldn't be the vampire Armand, because they did a really good job of concealing who he is. And I also have questions about, why is he hiding who he is? I feel very confused by that. Why does he not want to be known? And I don't have the answers yet. But what I do know is, in the books, Armand is the one that made Daniel Malloy a vampire, and that they had a long relationship, spending years, almost a decade, I think, before Daniel was made a vampire. So I don't know how that's going to play out in this show. I don't know if Daniel is still going to be made a vampire. I have so many questions and thoughts. But yeah, that was the episode. And I have to say, my favorite episode was when Daniel Malloy was just grilling Louis and said something to the effect of, 10 million is my whore number. That was so funny. That took me out. I was just like, that was echoing in my mind, and it almost made it hard for me to like focus. I was so disoriented laughing. But yeah, that was my favorite line of the episode. And yeah, it was violent. And I think I was definitely right about how episode 5 was so violent, because it has to kind of echo in this episode, right? Something so violent happened to Luis that this violence in this episode would be justified. And so yeah, that's all I could think of. Oh, one more thing. Louis said that Armand is the love of his life. And I just looked at Louis and I was like, oh my gosh, blink twice if you need help. Because I'm not buying it. There is more going on than we know. And I don't understand right now. I just feel so, yeah, I think I've just had the rug pulled out from under me, and I'm still trying to figure this out. So I'm going to make one other video, and it's going to be about what I think is going to happen in season 2. And also I'll try to think of some more questions and review all the different scenes with Armand this season that clearly went over my head. I'm so annoyed. But yeah, that's it. Let me know what you think about the episode. What do you think is going to happen in season 2? And I think I'm going to just refresh my memory on what happens with the vampire Armand and Daniel, because my memory is a bit foggy. But anyways, thank you for watching this video. Like, subscribe, comment below, and I'll see you next time.